Welcome back, everybody, to Get Your Geek On's Pixar retrospective review. We're here to not go back in time.
No.
We're here to talk about the newest Pixar movie, Soul, which was released on Christmas Day, starring Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey. This was released straight to Disney Plus. It was also, I think, released in some theaters in places where theaters are open.
Yeah, I was gonna say where you can.
But I did not see it on theater. I saw it in the big on the small screen at home.
Same.
And so we're going to talk about this movie that is Pixar's look at the metaphysical world a little bit. So why don't you start us off, Aaron, and tell us a little bit about Soul, what you liked, what you didn't.
So Soul follows Jamie Foxx's character, who is a music teacher with the passion to hit it big in the music realm, and especially piano jazz.
Yeah.
That's where he's trying to make it big. He wants to be this big famous guy.
That's what he was put on this earth to do. I mean, that's like that.
That's his spark.
Well, that's the word they use, but he definitely says at different points, he says it several times,
yes,
this is what I'm meant to do. I'm supposed to play jazz piano.
Yes.
As that is my life's purpose.
Yeah, ever since his dad took him to this piano bar, I would say, he heard the musician, fell in love, and now we see him trying to have his family also.
Well, he gets his big break.
Oh, he gets a break first, that's right.
On that same day, as getting his big break of playing with like a famous jazz musician,
he got offered the teacher.
He also gets offered a job to be a full-time teacher at a school, music teacher, which, obviously offers stability and all those things. And then having both of those things happen,
the fam comes in.
He dies?
We got the comment to the fam first.
Well, I just want to give it an overall kind of, just...
Oh, yeah.
So then
he dies.
Yeah, he gets separated from his body. He's like basically on life support. So he doesn't officially die, but his soul leaves his body, and it is very clear that he is going to go to the great beyond, but he's not ready. His soul is not ready to pass on. He fights his way back and ends up in a place called the Great Before, which is where souls are created and eventually allowed to go to Earth once they're ready to live. And he spends basically the rest of the movie trying to get back into his body, trying to get his soul back into his body so that he can continue to pursue his dreams.
Exactly. And then we meet our characters, 22. We meet the Jerrys.
Terry.
And we get a look at what they call...
Where was Larry?
I don't know. I was waiting for a Larry.
Or Barry?
I honestly was.
Barry?
Well, he's running around as the Flash. He can't come out. He's too busy. So, I don't know. So, and then we get to see the Great Beyond, like what happens afterwards. We get a lot. And then at the end of it, we get him, I'm just going to wrap it up right there. We get him essentially playing at the show that he was meant to play at, he thinks, to get his break, to meet a legend, essentially.
And spoiler alert. I think we're going to just kind of talk spoilers on this.
Spoiler. So he meets a legend. He gets that big shot. He makes it, but he doesn't feel it.
It's not fulfilling in the way that he expected it to be.
So then we get the rest of the story pushing forward, and at the end of it, we get a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we get into the elements of the story and everything, I will say that this movie was, I think, Pixar's most mature movie to date.
Oh yeah.
Pixar has dealt with a lot of mature themes over the years. I mean, whether it's something like Coco or Inside Out, or even the Toy Story movies, like there are mature themes running through these movies. Incredibles has a lot of very mature themes, mature family themes and things like that.
Yeah.
This one, not only are we is our protagonist a middle-aged man, but even the sidekick is also someone who is thousands of years old, even though they may act like a child. At times, they're not. So we don't really have anyone in this universe that a child can latch onto and say, that's me.
Even if you go with her, like you said, thousands of years old, but she has a literal understanding of everything.
Yeah.
It's very literal. It's not emotional. To me, it's very logical and literal. And that's her personality throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. And so this movie, I felt like it just didn't feel like a kid's movie to me. No. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that, the movie, obviously we're going to get into pros and cons and what we liked and what we didn't like. But I just, watching it, I actually on Christmas Day, I put this movie on kind of in the background
Right.
while some stuff was going on, and my daughter, who's 4 years old, like got caught up in a few things, like it's animation. She got caught up in some of the music, but she was clearly not paying attention to any of the story.
She was. No.
And again, the themes of this story, I think, are very adult, to the point that, I mean, I might not even recommend this like for a teenager. Like, I mean, I just like it's really like this is for. I feel like this is for like people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who are like trying to find purpose with their life, and it's just not for a kid, because kids don't think that deeply usually.
And I agree. I know a couple of random ones who do, but you're right. It's not the norm. The only one I would say that may be a really good hit for this one is the kids right out of high school, or those seniors, because they don't, a lot of times, I know when I was graduating, I had an idea of what I wanted, but I didn't know yet.
Yeah.
And I think this is good for someone that's about to be entering the real world from high school, your school, or even college, maybe even leaving college. I think those are your best times to watch this movie.
Which is true, but then I also think of like when I was 17 and 18, most of the people I went to high school with would have dismissed animation out of hand. They would have gone like, oh, I don't want to watch an animated movie. That's for kids. And so like this, it's a fine line. Like I wasn't like that. I love animated movies and I always have. And I think I always will.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a kind of, I guess, just kind of a preconceived notion about animation that people say, oh, that's for kids. Pixar has started to change the game with that.
They have. But you still have anime that's kind of really blown up in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, but anime is also very different. I mean, that's not, anime is not American animation.
That's true.
So anyways, so getting that out of hand is that I don't think this is a kid's movie. I think this movie is for adults. And so trying to view it through that prism, because there, a lot of the jokes in this are for adults. Like when she's going, when 22 is going through all of her previous mentors, and you've got Abraham Lincoln, and like all of these different, and they're making
what?
And I mean, they're making all of these like references and all this, and like none of that is for kids.
Yeah. And
like 100%, that is, you have to know who those figures are. I mean, you've got Mother Teresa, and you've got, and like,
I mean, that's an old reference too.
Kids don't know these people, and they're not gonna, like, not only are they not gonna recognize the name, but then you throw in like the joke that they're making, and it's like the Andrew Jackson joke, and it's like, I don't even know that many adults that are going to get that joke. I get it because I'm a history nerd.
Same. it's like we get it, but it's like, oh.
Like, how many people are going to be like, what? Yeah.
And I agree with you, because, we have, our kids are pretty far in age. You're 4, right? Mine's about to be 11.
Yeah.
So I seen it from, I'm sure she had a different look at it. And my kiddos, half the jokes, like you said, from, what? It was really this look, huh?
Yeah.
What? And it's like, oh, shoot. I look at her and I'm like, you weren't alive. Mother Teresa, been dead for like, what, 23 years or so?
Yeah, I don't know.
You have no idea who the heck that is. I barely honestly remember her. My mom remembers her, because she died in the 90s. And then, like you said, Andrew Jackson, she has no idea what president's on the bills right now. She knows who, if you show her a picture of that person, she'll be like, oh yeah, he's on this bill. But she has no idea who Andrew Jackson is. No idea. She barely knows Abraham Lincoln. She knows a little bit. But it's like, a lot of these jokes are going to go over their head. You got, didn't you have Mozart, or you had...
I mean, there were a few, like there was a composer, there was like someone who, was like a famous psychologist. Like there was a bunch.
That one went over her head. She's like, well, what's that too? And it's just like, you don't...
There were a lot of jokes in this, but most of them, again, were for adult fare.
Yeah.
I will say, so again, getting into spoilers, the way that they first get back to Earth is... 22 ends up in Joe's body, and he ends up in the body of a cat.
Right. A cat.
And I was not on board with that. No. I like that, to me, it felt very like we finally got, and I'm not going to go too crazy with this, but we finally got a black lead.
Yeah.
Which is the first one that we've gotten from Pixar. And there aren't a ton of animated movies with black leads. I mean, you've got, something like The Princess and the Frog, or, a few other...
Spider-Verse, but that's not even them.
There's not a ton out there. And so we finally got one from Pixar. And right away, within the first, 10 minutes, he ends up as a soul instead of as a black person. And then when he comes back, he's now a cat instead of a black person. And you've got, Tina Fey, who is a white person.
Yeah.
Inhabiting the body of a black, and it just like it rubbed me the wrong way right away. And so this movie had a little bit of an uphill journey for me.
Yeah.
Where it was like, like really that's the story we're telling. And I understand what they're trying to do, and they're trying to, kind of it's the same, like walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And so it's, he's having the opportunity to kind of see from outside, is someone's new perspective on what life is like.
Yeah.
And, so he's having the opportunity to do that. Obviously 22 is having an opportunity to actually live in someone else's shoes and experience life. As you said, she kind of had a logical understanding of a lot of things, but it didn't have any of the emotion tied to it. And so she finally got an opportunity to do that. I think, overall this movie didn't hit me emotionally at its core like I think it was trying to. And I also felt like I really had a tough time with Joe. Because I felt like he was extremely selfish for pretty much the entire movie.
And that never changed. It never really changed.
Yeah, I mean, like at the very end, I guess, when he finally confronts 22 and basically tells her that he was being selfish and that she needs to go to Earth and all those things. But you're right. Even then, it still doesn't really come from a place of selflessness as much as he cares about 22.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, because he doesn't, even after the last scene after that, to me at least, the end scene still makes it seem like he didn't change. I guess I don't want to jump into that part just yet.
Okay.
But I love how you talked about the cat and all that, because I want to talk about that because I was okay with it for a little bit.
Yeah.
But what really took me out of it, what really actually took me out of the film, I will say it this way. First of all, let me backtrack. The barbershop scene I actually liked.
Yeah, the barbershop scene was great.
Perfect. Because I think a lot of us...
scene in the movie.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do talk to our barbers, or stylists, whatever you want to call them. But we don't really talk to them. I've had lucky experiences with the place I go to that we touched on a subject last time I was there. We actually had a mutual friend, and we've never met each other. And it was like, this guy? What? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I used to live, and then we just went with stories about that guy. Nice. And it's like, cool. Yeah. That's something like, that would never normally come up. Oh, how's your day? Oh, it's good. How's yours? Oh, good. Yeah. I like that scene.
Yeah.
Now that scene also tells us that the cat meows. People hear this cat, and it's like, your cat's going crazy while he's talking. So I'm okay with that.
Right. Like 22 in Joe's body can understand Joe and the cat. They can talk to each other, but everyone else just hears a cat meowing.
Yeah. And I liked...
Everyone also hears Joe talking to what appears to be a cat, and it like makes him look a little kooky at times. And they call that out too.
Yeah. And I like that they called it out, but they're like, okay, he's just strange. It's okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
But what finally took me away from all of it and what I hated is the mother, we go into the mother, his suit tears.
That very confrontational, emotional moment. Yes. And they step away from that reality.
Yes. And that took me, boom, right out. Because I was like, looking at the cat, and I'm like, why is the cat's mouth not moving?
And they do a kind of camera trick where it kind of pans behind the mom, and it goes from one shoulder, and then it behind her head, and then the other shoulder.
Yes.
And they're changing the reality.
Yes.
And so when they do that, when you get to the other side, now
you don't hear her voice.
She's speaking to Joe, and it's Joe in his own body giving his answers, but they haven't explained why 22 in Joe's body is able to now have a full conversation, including back and forth responses without the cat making any noise.
No, and it's just sitting there perfectly just listening. And then he has that mind-blowing family moment in his own little cat brain or whatever at that point. And it's like, no one's seen you. And I don't get it. And that literally took me out of the film.
Sure.
And I could not get back in after that moment because I was so like, and I know I hang on to things. We know I do that. But that was just such a big thing because that conversation's so important. And that one was supposed to be what reunites Joe with his mom, because they've already shown their add-ons ends, because she's like, drop your dream of being a jazz musician, go be a teacher, get your benefits, go find a woman, go do this, go do that kind of thing. Yeah. And he's like, no, I want to follow my dream. And that's the big confrontation, we'll say, because the mom's not an antagonist, but she's just someone who's at odd ends with her, difference of opinions, we'll say even.
Yeah, I mean, she's a mom who wants the best for her child, and
exactly
what she views as best for him is stability, is financial stability, and all those things.
The benefits,
and
everything
he's
else.
going, but that's not what I love to do.
Exactly.
Right. And so there is that conflict, and I think that again, that's the type of thing that should hit and should matter. I don't know. Like, again, we've talked at different movies throughout this series have hit me, different ways emotionally. Yeah. This one, I don't know that I've ever been like I have grand dreams and I know what I'm supposed to do and like all those things, except that I feel like even since I was a little kid, like I always wanted to have a family. And be a parent, be a dad, and so that thing, and that's not the type of thing that anyone in my family would have said, don't pursue that dream.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't really like this didn't hit me emotionally because I've never had that spark, as they would say, where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to sing or I'm supposed to play. Like, I do some of those things and I do creative things. I'm sitting here right now talking about movies. Like, but it's never felt like this is supposed to be my purpose. Like, I was put on the earth to do this. And I think this movie is for people like that feel like I am here to do this thing. That's why I'm on the earth. And then it's a balance of, can you pursue that too far? Are you, sacrificing other aspects of your life in order to pursue that? And does that end up, costing you in the long run? Which I think is what this movie is about, because you see these, and they have that concept for lost souls, which is people that are kind of trapped, in some sort of obsession. And for some people, that's a bad obsession. Yeah. But for other people, it can even be a good obsession. Like we see, and this, a lot of people will understand this, I think, when you are in the zone, whether you're playing sports or,
which I like how they commented
music,
on that.
Like that type of thing. But they even talk about if you are too caught up in that, you can become a lost soul. And so someone who, plays jazz music for a living, and that's what they do, and they, that's what they give all of their energy to, how much else are they going to miss out on in the world? And that's kind of what this movie is telling you, is that Joe is missing out on family connections. He's missing out on the little small things in life. But
that doesn't.
What didn't drive it home for me? Is that he did have that emotional confrontation with his mother, where they kind of reconciled, and then she came to his show afterwards. But then they didn't have any closure after that. They didn't have a follow-up scene, and there is also kind of throughout the story, like 22 is in Joe's body, which means she's in Joe's brain. And so she keeps bringing up this woman that is clearly in Joe's brain. And you get the sense that there was some sort of romantic relationship there, but he's not pursuing it because he's too focused on his career, on his music and that type of thing. We don't know if that it's just a, something that's never been, or maybe it's a past relationship that went sour because he was devoting too much.
We've never seen a woman.
We don't know.
We don't see a woman
in the movie,
and they
never
right?
circle back to it. And to me, that was something that really fell short. Is I was going, you needed to establish that he learned something from this whole journey, and really all they did was at the end he goes, I'm going to live every moment of my life, but they don't show how he does that. And I really felt like this ending let me down.
And I agree with you on that, because the ending let me down. We've had this whole journey, and again, we don't know, because I think they comment time is kind of slow where they're at. So we don't really know how much time he spent with 22.
Yeah.
But obviously enough to...
Well, it's like one day.
But is it one day our time, or is one day the same as theirs? Because I thought they mentioned that comment that's kind of slow.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
My thing is this, is that, we had this journey, like you said, he comes back and he tells 22, I'm sorry, I screwed up, blah, blah, blah. Has that emotional connection to 22.
Yeah.
They come back to Earth, but you're telling me he's just like, okay, bye. Like, there was never I didn't feel regret that he, sadness that she left. Like, he leads her down, holding her hand. We get that whole thing. That's like, cool, you brought her back. But you don't get any, like me, if I spent that much time with somebody and I had that connection to where I felt like, hey, I need to say sorry, I would want to be like, hey, I wonder if they're doing okay. Like, even just a thought. Or it would have been nice to be like, he sees a newborn baby somewhere walking by, and it kind of stares at him for a minute, and he's like, oh, that must be 22, or maybe even kind of looks a little like 22. Like,
sure.
Just some connection to show that he still remembers what he went through. Because like you said, at the end, he's like, I'm gonna live my life now, like every moment. And it's like, did you learn anything really?
Yeah.
Did you? I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely, again, like I like the message this
yes.
movie is giving us, which is, live every moment.
Yeah. Have your bucket list, I would say.
Yeah, and it's like don't focus so much on one thing that you miss everything else. Like it's about, you could still pursue your dreams, but make sure that you don't lose everything else along the way.
Yeah.
And so I like the message that it's telling me, but unfortunately I felt like it didn't hit it home enough. Like it didn't drive it home. And so it just kind of left me a little bit wanting. And definitely by the end of the movie, there's not closure, which this is the thing where, again, this is what tells me this is an adult movie and not a kid's movie. Mm-hmm. In a kid's movie, you wrap everything up, you give closure, you say where every character ends up and what, there's like a montage at the end and it's a song and whatever. Like that's animated kids movies is we're going to wrap this story up so that you can walk out. And this movie does not do that.
No, not at all.
It leaves open-ended things. We don't know what happened to 22.
No.
We don't know, we don't see Joe living with the new choices that he's made. We don't see and one of the things I'm thinking about, and as I'm, as I kind of went through that, this is what stories give you is like, The Emperor's New Groove is one of my like favorite all-time animated movies. I love that movie. And at the end of that movie, we get a little montage of like what we've learned. And so now, not only do we tell you that Kuzco learned that he's not supposed to be selfish and all these things, but then we get them, playing together in a pool. We get him being nice to people as the Emperor. Like we get it, and it's a minute. Like it doesn't take a long time to do that, but you actually give the closure. And that's what this movie didn't do. And that was on purpose, by the way. Like I've looked at, some interviews and things like that with the director, Pete Docter, and he talked about how they did have different endings where they had closure. They had endings where Joe went to the great beyond instead of coming back to Earth. Mm-hmm. They had endings where he came back to Earth and then spent some time on Earth and those types of things. And they just felt like this was the ending they wanted to tell for this movie.
See, and that doesn't...
And that's what just makes me go, okay, it's not a kid's movie. Like, because there's lots of adult movies that leave you this way.
Yeah.
That don't give you the closure. And so I'm fine with that as a movie. That's just, it was totally not expected in this movie. And it's why I really felt like I didn't love this movie. I know it's been getting a lot of praise and a lot of people have been saying like this is one of Pixar's best. It just didn't feel like that for me.
And again, I think it's like we've said throughout this whole series, certain movies hit us differently.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I never had that like, oh, I'm going to be this. I was always told growing up, try to get into computers because that's where the world's going to go. So that's what my dad wanted. And then, I got into it a little bit, but then I got more into like networking and then I got more into editing, podcast, all this stuff now. Sure. And this is what I like to do, but I don't have that like, this is what I was meant on earth to do. I'm like, if I do what I like.
Yeah.
And I have, in my mind, I have a bucket list. It's like, okay, what do I do? Skydiving. Been there, done that.
No,
Ziplining. Been there, done that.
No, thanks.
My next one is to do a full marathon. I've done a half marathon, which was fun. I want to do a zombie marathon. Like there's all these little things I want to go do, but it's like, I'll do them eventually. I have time. And, I was talking to another friend. We're going to do like some haunted videos. That's stuff I like to do. So it's like, to me, I don't have that spark either of like, I have to go play jazz 24/7. No, I don't. I can, not care. But, and again, the ending I think you're right. It's an adult ending, but there's just so many different ways we could have an adult ending with even just a little bit of closure. Like maybe even if it's just for me, it could have been simple as the sigh at the end and then a raise of a hand and the door knock. Like it changes from an outside background to like maybe a hallway or something. And he's like, hi again. And it's all, you don't even see the woman, but it just shows that he went to go talk to her, finally realizing he needs to live life.
Which,
I would have loved that.
Again, and I'm going to draw on another Disney movie, although this is live action, and it's one that most people have not seen. It's with Bruce Willis. It's called The Kid. And it's actually like, it's a really good movie. I recommend it for people. But it's about, Bruce Willis as a middle-aged man is like, basically, it's the same story. It's like he's disconnected from everyone in his life. He's, very, he's selfish. He's all these things. And he ends up through, weird, timey, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. Basically his, like, himself as an 8-year-old child ends up in his world.
Okay.
And so it's now, like 35-year-old and 8-year-old and Or actually, I think he's supposed to be 40 in the movie. And it's like this whole thing where this 8-year-old is basically showing him, like, you've wasted your life. You haven't done anything important. You don't have any connections, like all this stuff. And like half the movie, he's going through like, oh, I've got to teach this 8-year-old how to get through life. And then he realizes, you know, like someone helps him realize like, no, this 8-year-old is telling you how to get through life.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of movies like that,
and
too.
so like there is a romantic connection that of course, you know, goes bad and all those things.
Yeah.
But the closing scene of the movie, he comes to her house to reconcile with her and he's got a little puppy, you know, kind of like, and like that's, and they don't really even say a word. Like it's just, it shows him arriving at the house, the door opens and, you know, the music kicks in like, we're going to have our happy ending.
Yeah.
And like, and that's enough closure. You get the closure. Like we didn't need a full scene. We didn't need to have a conversation of like her forgiving him or any of that. But you got that scene. And that's the same type of thing that you're talking about is some sort of scene at the end that's showing that he's learned something and he's going to use his second chance at life a little bit differently.
Because to me, at the end of this, I still don't feel he's not going to use it.
Right. He says he's going to use it.
Yeah.
But we don't actually see him use it apart from he just looks up at the sky and I'm going to appreciate the sun. I mean, like, I don't know.
I'm blind now.
Yeah.
Stared at it too long.
So, you know, okay.
I don't know.
So this wasn't our favorite.
No.
It did have some great things.
Yes.
There were some really great visual representations of things like being in the zone. Things I
think I like the Lost Soul part because you were too in the zone.
Yeah.
You fell into the Lost Souls.
Again, the barbershop scene where, you know,
that was my favorite.
It was a great scene. It was really good. There was some good humor in this. I especially like the character of Terry, you know, the accountant. I thought that was a really fun character.
Do we want to comment on the kidnapping part, or do you want to leave it alone?
It's up to you.
So, well, I didn't know because that goes political too. I didn't know if we want to touch it
a little bit.
So, I mean, I thought that was an interesting played out scene with it because so at one point Terry gets kidnapped kidnaps
a random black
guy
that.
And now torments him.
She thinks is Joe.
Yeah, he just like, this must be Joe. Ram kidnaps him, takes his soul out of his body for a minute, and he's like, oh crap, puts it back in. Basically has a little humor with him of don't eat processed foods. Yeah. And then he pops up in the chip, really, don't eat processed foods. And the guy's like just terrorized sitting there. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of the, and we might be reading too much into it, but it's a little bit of all black people look alike. And so, it's the,
I don't know. That was funny.
Misidentified a black man, which again, as you said, a little bit political. That happens a lot where it's like, oh, you fit the profile. It's like, what's the profile? My skin color?
Exactly.
That's kind of BS. So yes, there is a little bit of that. That was a little bit of a like it's meant to be a humorous scene, but there is kind of that undertone where you're like, that's actually really dark.
Exactly. Like I laughed. I was like, and it took a minute to hit. I was like, oh no.
So, anyways, I mean, I think the movie overall, it has its moments.
It does.
I can see who this movie is for. It's just not me.
Yeah, same. And I hope somebody enjoys it. I hope a lot of people enjoy it and find something from it.
I know a lot of people do. Like I've seen. I'm part of a few movie groups and things like that and there's been a lot of discussion around this movie and a lot of people seem to love it and that's great. Like I'm really glad that people do. Again, this one wasn't for me. We've been through that and movies are for some people and they're not for others. This one, as much as I can appreciate a lot of what was done, and I think like the animation style again as usual with Pixar was really great.
It was good.
Especially the scenes where like you're seeing him play piano and stuff, like it looks so realistic. It's incredible. But yeah, I mean, this movie overall, it didn't stick the landing for me. The emotional parts didn't. Like that's one of the things that I come to with Pixar movies is I come to them expecting to cry at some point.
You do.
This movie,
I have no soul still.
Yeah, this movie didn't even make me think about crying. Like there are some movies where it's like, okay, in Up, I cry. In Inside Out, I cry. In Coco, I cry. Yeah. There's other movies like Finding Nemo where I don't cry, but I get close. It's like, you can kind of like, like even Toy Story, like there are moments where it's like, okay, I like that's not making me emotional, but I can start to feel it kind of bubbling in the back. This one, it didn't hit me at all.
Yeah. And I'm in that same boat with you. Like I said, the barbershop was my favorite scene where it hit a little bit.
Yep.
But otherwise, I'm just kind of like, no, the humor hit sometimes it missed.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part of the humor was when I found out I can't think of his name. The guy from the IT Crowd though was in the movie.
Oh yeah,
He plays one of the
Richard
Jerrys.
Ayoade, I think.
Yeah.
His last name is really weird. So
I don't even try.
Definitely don't try.
No, I mean, but I love him. I love him in the IT Crowd.
Yeah.
And the moment I heard his voice, I was like, oh, he's the IT Crowd guy. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's him.
Well, and Terry is played by a woman who's worked a lot with Taika Waititi. So like in Thor Ragnarok, she is the Grandmaster's right hand woman.
Okay, I remember you saying that. Yeah.
And so like, and I as soon as I knew that fact, I could hear her voice as well, and I was like, oh yeah, that's her. And I think she was really great. The Jerrys and Terrys and really the Great Before world I thought was really interesting.
That was an interesting concept.
And everything that they went through of like inspiration, the Hall of Everything, which is where you can experience anything, but you can't really experience it. They have that whole scene with like pizza. Where you can't actually taste it in the Great Before. And so when you see that first moment where 22 has a slice of pizza, and I loved that, was actually I think maybe my favorite joke in the whole movie, because it like zooms into her brain. It's like, it's amazing, and then it cuts back to reality. She's like, it's okay. And I was like, funny. I was like, okay, that's a very real,
a good one.
Like that's how people do. Like sometimes when they experience the best thing in life, and then they're just like, it's fine.
It's fine.
And you're like, no, like you can be excited.
Exactly.
Like you can be over the moon about something.
I like that scene. I think one of my favorite ones was where they at the end of it, where they're like, oh, we're gonna send you back to Earth. He's like, what about Terry? And we have a plan for that. Yeah. Hey, Terry, over there. Is that asteroid? And then just moves the beat over.
Just gonna distract him real quick.
And he just walks off. I'm like, all right.
So we've talked about this movie for a while.
Yeah. What is your score?
I'm gonna throw this one. Yeah, I'm gonna throw this one at like a 6.
Okay.
So 6 out of 10. I think it's a good movie. I think there's a lot to like in it. And I think if the emotional beats hit you, you're gonna love this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they don't, you can still appreciate what it's for. Again, I don't think it's a kids movie, and so like for a kid, I just would not show this to them.
Yeah.
For an adult, I'm gonna say 6 out of 10. What about you?
Okay. Because I don't want to be right with you on 6. I'm gonna say 5.99. 5.9.
You can agree with me. It's okay.
No, yeah, I would honestly. I agree. It's a 6. I don't think it's great. I think, like you said, some of the animation is what we expect from Pixar.
Yeah,
it knocks it out of the park. I do have my moments I like. The barbershop, the end, the pizza scene. I completely forgot to right now. But like I said, I have that. For me, that moment personally where the cat's not talking takes me completely out, and I could never jump back in.
Sure.
So I think if I could jump back in, maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. But yeah, that's 6, because for me, the emotional parts just don't hit at all. Like we've said before in some of these, I don't cry. I have no soul apparently, and this movie didn't give me one either. So I'm still soulless.
We were building to soul, and we were gonna say, is this where Aaron's gonna get his soul? He did not.
Nope. Still didn't.
He did
Maybe
not.
Their next movie will give me a soul. I don't know. But I agree. Some people will love this. I'm sure it'll be a 10 out of 10 for them kind of thing. For us, right? 6 out of 10. But
yeah.
It was still a good movie. Go watch it still. I still say watch it.
And as always, make up your own mind. If you watch this entire spoiler review without...
I'm sorry. Not really.
Right, without actually watching the movie yourself.
Good luck.
Go watch it. But also, don't let our opinions change what you think about it. And, whatever your experience is totally valid. If you loved it, you loved it. If you hated it, you can hate it too.
I mean, let us know below in the comments, guys, what you thought of it. What's your opinion?
We want to know.
What was your favorite scene, honestly? I actually want to know people's favorite scenes. That's something I always like to know.
And to me, I would say if your favorite scene isn't the barbershop scene, what's wrong with you? Because that scene was great.
That sold me, honestly. Yeah. So definitely leave those comments, subscribe, hit that like button. And of course, guys, this is Get Your Geek On. Robert, Aaron, and we're going to wrap this up for until our next movie review, guys. Stay geeky and get your geek on.